two-time champion making his final start in the Sprint Cup Series. Superstar in the open wheels. Made the transition to stock cars, and he made it better than anyone else. Able to win 3 championships at the highest level of racing in America, and Tony Stewart has decided that this will be his final year, this will be his final race. Jeff, you had mentioned about the emotions that will be running through Tony Stewart, the fact that this is it. This will be today will be the final day of practice that he'll ever have in the Sprint Cup Series.
Yeah, I think he's going to be okay with that. But I think just like Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon when he gets ready to climb in that race car and understands that that's going to be the last time. I understand he may run. Who knows what he's going to do? He's going to race everything, but this has been such a huge part of his life. And I know he's going to be around, but it's not the same as being the driver. And I think all that will hit him on Sunday. And I think it'll be a surprise how overwhelming that feeling is.
It's been a pretty incredible career for Tony Stewart. Most definitely, when he is eligible, will be inducted into the Hall of Fame. Made the decision at the age of 45 to retire. He's 3 times a champion. In 2011, maybe one of the greatest championship battles we've ever seen. Came in as an open wheel superstar and won Rookie of the Year in 1999.
That Rookie of the Year, he won that. It was extremely impressive how he won it. He came in, was immediately fast, immediately turned heads.
15 straight seasons he was able to get to victory lane. And again this year, won at Sonoma. That enabled him to be a part of the chase. Wasn't able to advance to run for a championship, but just that win, getting the 49th win in his final season, was very big for this team.
Loves to race. He's 100%. And Tony's very interesting. He's a hard-nosed guy, but then he'll turn it right around and do something exceptionally nice for somebody. It's amazing how many people he's touched and doesn't want anybody to know about it.
Well, Tony Stewart's making his final start in the Sprint Cup Series. It's on a weekend that the chase is going to determine the champion. And this 19 of Carletti, which we showed earlier, that comparing the 19 to the 22 of Joe Logano and the 48 of Jimmy Johnson, we thought the 19 was the best. But then Kyle Busch was still in the garage at that point. Jeff, so if you go back to our line graph, remember you want to be low down on the graph. That means a faster lap. It's very clear that Carl Edwards is much, much faster in this whole portion. But could that be track temperature? Could that be tires? Could that be the line they're in? You mentioned Kyle Busch ran the bottom of the racetrack, but what does stand out is out here on old tires, what I would consider a worse racetrack later in practice. Kyle Busch, that red line, gets us fast around lap 9, even running the bottom of the racetrack. So while Kyle Busch may be 28th on the board on fast lap, Rick, I think this 18 car is much better than that when you start to look at really what their agenda was. I don't think they knew they weren't going to run a fast lap waiting in the garage.
Now remember their teammates. They're both driving for Joe Gibbs Racing, and earlier in the year at Richmond, Kyle Busch out in front, leading the race at Richmond, and the battle ensued between teammates as far as that top spot. Carl Edwards, late in the race, decided, I'll put the bumper to you, move you out of the way for the win. And so Carl Edwards moved Kyle Busch out of the way to get the win. He gets the checkered flag and more or less sets the tone for how the two will race. And earlier this week, they were visiting on Dan Patrick's show.
Final lap, Carl's leading. You're in second. What's the etiquette, Kyle?
I kind of sealed that earlier in the year when I bumped him out of the way. So, well, I know the answer to that.
That's why I thought I'd return the favor here.
Let's just put it this way. I hope I'm close enough. Yeah.
So you're going to ask yourself if Carl could go back and do it again, would he change Richmond? Because there's no way at Richmond in the spring he had any idea if this would be the teammate he'd be racing in Miami. Now he had to obviously know he was going to race against Kyle at times. But here, that was for a win at Richmond. This is for the ultimate prize.
And remember, Dan Patrick didn't bring that up.
Right.
Kyle Busch brought that up.
That's
He
right.
brought that up after the race last week in his post-race interview. He was the one that brought that conversation up. He was the one that said, hey, I remember what happened in Richmond. That came from Kyle. So, and we hadn't heard a word about it.
Right.
So as a championship, now was going to be decided at Homestead, it came out. It had been back there somewhere, but it hadn't been come out, but it came out Sunday.
You drivers never forget anything. Let's go to Kelly.
And I actually had the opportunity to ask Carl that very question. I said, do you have any regrets now? Would you go back and change what you did at Richmond? Now, given the circumstances, you find yourself in this championship. He said, no, definitely no. So that was just hard racing, and that scenario was very specific. He said it was low-speed racing. Kyle knew I was coming, and he said, now, even now, if Kyle's more inclined to move me this week because of that incident, still wouldn't change it. That was just racing. And getting back to the task at hand here in practice, he's now made 2 runs. They tweaked the car a little bit in between them. And then Dave Rogers asked Carl for a little bit of feedback. Here's what he said.
Really hard to tell a difference there, Dave. That's what I was talking about. I was hoping you could break up the corner as you were driving there. And there was a small change. Just hoping you could dissect it for me. It's okay. We'll talk about it.
And then obviously that conversation turned to the digital radio, so we're not privy to that. I can tell you, though, that he was also interested in where the 48 was running. The team telling him the 48 had been working just above the top seam.
It seems as though the drivers continuing to watch their competition. Where are they running? As you look at the best 5-lap average, 3 of the 4 championship 4 are the top 3.